Hello and welcome to Butter Movies. Following a brief hiatus, Dexter, Original Sin Episode 7, The Big Bad Body Problem, returns to drop a major villain twist that may divide audiences. After the confirmation that the ice truck killer Brian Moser was keeping tabs on Dexter in Dexter, Original Sin Episode 6, Episode 7 reveals an even bigger plot twist. Captain Aaron Spencer, played by an otherwise charming Patrick Dempsey, is the series' main villain and Jimmy Powell's murderer. Dexter makes quick work of the Episode 6 cliffhanger, pulling out his handy-dandy Miami Metro credentials to justify his presence at the active crime scene of Tony Ferrer. While Dexter's tactics in Episode 7 are a bit amateurish, such as dumping Levi Reed's body into a public dumpster in broad daylight, the series still remains compelling and mostly imaginative. Episode 7 also features a hefty chunk of Harry and Laura's backstory and the introduction of another key Dexter killer, the notorious Hector Estrada. Deb continues to bump heads with a high school rival and volleyball teammate but goes too far and gets kicked off the team. She also sticks up for her brother for the first time but loses her closest friend Sofia in the process. While luck has historically been on Dexter's side, it arrives a bit too easily in Episode 7. He sits back and does nothing as his new girlfriend Sofia switches moods from mad to sympathetic to enraged in a matter of minutes. He convinces Angel not to look into Tony Ferrer's murder just through a simple manipulative redirection to find Jimmy Powell's killer instead. Later, Dexter even probes a room full of cops about how they would hide a body a day after covertly feeding Ferrer's arm to an alligator. All this reads as quite suspicious and allows Dexter to play with fire a bit too recklessly, especially considering the recent close call with Mad Dog in Episode 4. While it's fun watching Dexter stumble through his origin story, Episode 7 feels like he's let off the hook too. Dexter's conveniences also roll over into the episode's big Aaron Spencer reveal. Tanya applauds Dexter for noticing the obvious spot of blood on the outside of the box containing Nikki Spencer's severed finger. Dexter notices a hesitation cut that he interprets as an indication of familiarity between the kidnapper and Nikki, which is a clever reach. The breadcrumb-following plot in Episode 7 moves along very swiftly. However, it does well to balance the various subplots, including Laura's first encounter with her eventual killer and Deb throwing away her future at Florida State. Aaron Spencer showed early signs that he could turn out to be the main villain in Original Sin Season 1. For starters, he was the only character connected to Judge Powell and had demonstrated his short fuse when it came to his relationship with his ex-wife, Becca. Every new character in Original Sin is also expected to make an exit at some point, which made him a natural suspect before the premiere even aired. The reveal that Spencer killed Jimmy Powell and then kidnapped and dismembered his teenage son is not as shocking as the series presents it to be. Spencer's line of questioning throughout Episode 7 is a bit too direct, asking "That's it? There's nothing else?" after Tanya completes her blood analysis. It's quite clear at that point he's checking to see if he's been exposed. His multiple bulletin board meetings about Jimmy and Nikki also felt performative and a bit too on the nose, which prematurely spelled things out to us. Now that it's certain Aaron is the main kidnapper and murderer, his motive remains the biggest mystery about his character, along with what Dexter plans to do about him. News of a police captain-turned-murderer would leave a stain on Miami Metro for life. It will be interesting to see from this point forward whether Dexter will intervene and frame Aaron's potential death as a murder or even an accident to preserve the integrity of the NHI killer serves as a stark reality check for Dexter too. Seeing a new killer take essentially the same approach to killing that Dexter does, but switching the victims to the most oppressed and downtrodden people in society paints Dexter in a new light. Even though he's killing other murderers, Dexter is killing people who he believes deserve to die, and so is the NHI killer. Dexter walks an extremely thin line between vigilante and monster, and the NHI killer shows that he would have easily fallen on the other side of that line if it hadn't been for Harry Morgan. The NHI killer doesn't just serve as a great storytelling device for Dexter, they also shine a light on Harry. If Dexter really is that similar to the NHI killer, and he's just targeting criminals so he won't be caught, then Harry was absolutely right to give Dexter the code. Harry correctly assumed that Dexter was going to become a serial killer, and he knew that he would probably target the same types of people the NHI killer was targeting. If Harry hadn't granted Dexter a moral compass and made him kill criminals, Dexter would slay any innocent person he wanted to. Levi Reed tried to convince Dexter Morgan that they were the same in Dexter, Original Sin, but there's another serial killer who is much more similar to Dexter. There have been plenty of serial killers in Dexter history who drew parallels between themselves and Dexter, and Original Sin just added another to the list. At the end of Original Sin Episode 6, Levi Reed tried to convince Dexter that they were the same, and he actually had a point. What Reed didn't realize, however, is that Dexter is much more similar to a different character in Original Sin. While he was on Dexter's kill table, Levi Reed said that they both loved the act of killing, but Dexter asserted that they were different because he only targeted people who deserved to die, not innocent people and children. Despite Dexter's rebuttal, he was still thinking about Reed's comparison as he drove to drop the body off in the Everglades, and he even wondered if the code of Harry was all that kept him from being a monster. Dexter likely won't find an answer to that question, though he may have to reckon with it soon thanks to a completely different murderer. Levi Reed was certainly a monster, but he also had a point. Both he and Dexter enjoyed killing, and for all of Dexter's notions of taking out the trash of Miami, he was still a killer. However, Dexter also had a point. His choice of victims compared to Levi Reed, who targeted innocent families and children, put a wide gulf between them. While there are definitely some similarities between Levi Reed and Dexter, there's a third serial killer in Original Sin who is a much better parallel to him, the NHI killer. Earlier in the episode, Dexter discovered a new serial killer who was targeting NHIs, an acronym for No Humans Involved, that refers to victims who were homeless, gay, or addicted to drugs. Maria Lagerta, Christina Milian, hypothesized that the NHI killer was targeting NHIs because no one would notice if they had gone missing, which would let them continue killing without being caught. That's essentially the same premise Dexter operates on. He kills criminals because he knows the police won't spend much time looking into their disappearance. If Dexter is similar to anyone in Original Sin, he's like the NHI killer, not Levi. Another day, another dollar, another kidnapping. In the opening moments of Friday's Dexter, Original Sin, the serial kidnapper hits closer to home when Captain Spencer's son Nicky gets taken from the family's garage in a horrifying home invasion. But Harry is nowhere near able to work that investigation thanks to majorly flubbing the Levi Reed case. So he, Dexter and Lagerta head to a new crime scene where the deceased's head is covered with 2 plastic bags. Dexter hypothesizes that the death could possibly be connected to some of the area's other kills, like the sex worker in Coconut Grove. Despite the different methods of murder, he says each kill has been more intimate and refined, almost as if it's evolving. And according to the FBI, 3 murders by the same perpetrator equals a serial killer by definition. Lagerta isn't sold, at least until later, when she finds a connection between the 3 Vics. All of them had no family or next of kin. They were completely isolated. Did the killer intentionally select his targets? Meanwhile, Dexter continues to eye Levi Reed, who would make kill number 3 for him, the magic number. There's no question the guy meets the code, but before we can follow Dexter's next kill, Spencer's wife comes into the station with a black eye. Spencer tries to interrogate his ex about the abduction, but she's traumatized and can't offer up any useful information. In the 70s, Harry and Laura both feel uncomfortable about their trysts, though the connection between them does feel real. It's been over a year since she's been working as his CI, but Harry says he needs her to make just one meeting with Estrada before he can cut her loose. When she goes in for her next meeting, a man who skimmed off the top of the organization is tied to a chair and his finger is cut off in front of her. Looks like you just got yourself a promotion, she's told. Laura is obviously terrified after the encounter and she wants out. As Harry explains that it's the only way he's been able to keep her out of jail, Bobby interrupts. Doris is going into labor. When Harry arrives at the hospital, the baby is already born, and in a surprise twist, Doris tells Harry he's got to end it. At the end of Dexter, Original Sin Episode 6, Tony Ferrer's arm and signature ring are discovered by Florida police officers in the Everglades. While Dexter had deposited the body of Nurse Mary there before, who was eaten up by alligators, it appears that Ferrer's body was not completely consumed by the natural wildlife. Ferrer's arm had already surfaced at the end of a previous episode, which was a foreshadowing of the events to come at the end of Original Sin Episode 6. Dexter will have to find a way out of his conversation with the police officer, who asks him what business he had being at the scene of the crime. Tony Ferrer, Dexter's second kill, was the first one that required him to do some real scouting work. After learning about the tragic story of Carla and Renee Carbullo, Dexter had all the justification he needed to take Tony off the streets. Tony may not have been a classic serial killer, but he was a financial predator that fed off disadvantaged people within his own community. Dexter killing Tony Ferrer likely saved a lot of people from making the same mistake as Renee and Raul did, which ended up costing them their lives. Dexter killed Tony in the center of a sports arena after pretending to need money from him under a false alias. Dexter will likely find a clever way out of his predicament with the police officer at the end of Original Sin Episode 6. He will probably lie and say something like he got lost, or he may have to pull his Miami Metro credentials if the cop doesn't buy his lost story. Dexter has shown up at his own crime scenes early in the original series, so this could be the prequel series' first example of that. It's highly unlikely that Dexter will become the contract killer named Mad Dog's been flattened by a car, so what's a serial killer in training to do? Some cleanup, and fast. In Friday's Dexter, Original Sin, both Dex and Harry make huge mistakes that nearly cost them. But were any lessons learned? Let's break it all down. Dexter calculates that he has about 15 minutes to clean things up before Miami Metro arrives on the scene. He uses a blacklight to check for blood and rolls up his plastic sheets, but the police are faster than usual to respond. Fortunately, Dex makes his escape without being seen or heard, or so he thinks. Dexter, Original Sin Episode 5, F is for F***** K up reveals a massive and unexpected twist about Harry and Dexter Morgan. After a strong Dexter, Original Sin premiere and a vintage double episode release with episodes 2 and 3, the Dexter, Original Episodes 4 and 5 continue to make impressive and entertaining strides for the series. Dexter, Original Sin Episode 5 narrows its focus on Harry's backstory through multiple timelines. One of the most stunning twists in Dexter, Original Sin thus far is Dexter putting Harry on his killing table at the end of Season 1, Episode 5. Dexter removed nearly all of Harry's clothes after sedating him and taping him to his killing table, making sure to dress up his own house with plastic wrap and all. While it makes for a very unexpected scene, Dexter was only trying to prove a point to Harry about his improved killing methods. He never intended to kill Harry, obviously. Dexter also makes the point to put Harry on his killing table to show Harry that if he had gone through with killing Levi Reed after his botched murder trial, he would have fit Dexter's code. Harry was spiraling out of control after getting too drunk at a bar and nearly killed Levi Reed outside his house with a silence pistol. Not only would that have ruined his professional career, but it would have made him a murderer. Dexter putting Harry on his own killing table is an indication that Harry is essentially just as guilty as Dexter for the kills. While they are not by his hand, but rather Dexter's, he sanctioned some and turned Dexter into who he is by the code of Harry. This raises the question, does he actually belong on the table, or does he get a pass like Dexter for cleaning up the streets of Miami? It's evident that Harry's hands and conscience are not entirely clean by the end of Dexter, Original Sin Episode 5. In the Dexter original series, several characters such as Deb, Batista, and Quinn get high or drunk at various times, but never Dexter. He'll drink occasionally, but he's always in control of himself, a point that he reiterates to Deb in Dexter, Original Sin. This just goes to show how much more difficult it became for him to control his dark passenger as he got older and kept killing, since he couldn't risk losing that control with drugs or alcohol. Dexter's eating habits in the original series were even more prevalent during his early killing days in Original Sin, which is how he ended up getting very high on Deb's weed brownies in the first place. This allowed him to be more open and unserious with Deb in a way that she had never seen before, which led to the two of them hanging out for the first time like true siblings, even though they technically weren't. At the start of Original Sin, Deb is humiliated for bringing Dexter to a party. 5 episodes later, the close connection between Deb and Dexter, which is the core of the original series, starts to form. While Dexter getting high on weed brownies was not on many people's Original Sin bingo cards, it provides some context as to why Dexter never indulged in drugs or alcohol as an adult, living in Miami of all places. Even several of his police officer co-workers, especially Deb, find ways to take the edge off, but Dexter never risks it, knowing the consequences would be too great. That moment in Dexter, Original Sin Episode 5 between Deb and Dexter is really the first time they act like their characters from the original series. While Dexter's alarming incident with Mad Dog nearly got him a life sentence in Dexter, Original Sin Episode 4, the series quickly wraps up Mad Dog's role and refocuses on Dexter's familial relationships with his sister Deb and deceased adoptive mom, Doris. Christian Slater's Harry continues to expand in both the present day and flashback timelines as he gradually becomes the highlight character of the prequel series. At the series midpoint, it's safe to say that Gibson's Dexter is fully convincing and has the potential to extend Original Sin into a multi-season effort. Given Deb's turbulent relationship history in the original series, her new romantic interest Gio is surely a person of interest to keep an eye on for the remainder of Original Sin Season 1. The main villain arc surrounding who killed Judge Powell's young son is interestingly unaddressed in Episode 5. Even Dexter takes a break from the main storyline to get goofy with Deb after eating a few too many special the brownies. What's most intriguing is the fierce subliminal tension that starts to surface between Harry and Dexter, hinting at a potential upcoming rift in their father-son dynamic. Dexter, Original Sin makes full use of Harry Morgan, so much so that he is very nearly the co-protagonist with Dexter. Considering that Harry will likely not make it past the Season 1 finale based on the original series lore, it makes sense for him to get as much screen time as possible leading up to his eventual death by suicide. While this comes at the expense of putting other supporting characters on the back burner, particularly those at Miami Metro PD, the core trio of Harry, Dexter, and Deb is strong enough to carry the majority of Episode 5. The fact that Harry's extensive backstory with Laura Mosa is interwoven with his present-day timeline involving a botched child murderer is no coincidence. While Harry has always been considered Dexter's biggest supporter as a serial killer vigilante, Original Sin introduces a more nuanced perspective of Harry and Dexter's strange dynamic for the first time in franchise history. In the original series, Harry is more of a mentor and a twisted sort of angel on Dexter's shoulder, reminding him of his responsibilities to the code. Seeing Harry as a human grasping for control in his own life and hanging on by a thread is just as, if not more, compelling than witnessing Dexter stumble his way into vigilantism. The amateurish eagerness Gibson brings to Dexter also elevates his version of the character. At some points, it feels like Gibson makes Dexter's dark passenger more apparent, hardly able to contain his distorted sense of excitement plotting his next kill. Now that the introductory phase of Original Sin is over, comparisons to the authenticity of the original series seem far less crucial since it is more established. Masuka, Batista, and LaGuerta, who make up much of the central Miami Metro PD characters in Dexter, are less important to the success of the prequel series now that its heart, the relationship between Dexter and Harry, has successfully taken control of the narrative. Original Sin continues to find risky, inventive, and visually impactful ways to bring Dexter and Harry's origins to life. This notion is confirmed in the shocking Episode 5 ending twist in which Dexter places Harry on his own kill table to demonstrate the improvements he's made with his methods. While the origin story of Dexter's sedation approach is a bit sloppy with an underutilized Sarah Michelle Gellar, who bets on horse races in the Miami Metro Forensics Lab, the big moment it creates essentially forgives this odd, forced setup. Similar to the over-the-top Ferrer kill in the center of a sports arena in Episode 3, Original Sin continues to find risky, inventive, and visually effective ways to bring both Dexter and Harry's origins to life. However, Episode 5 can feel like a dip in momentum after the thrilling pace of Episodes 3 and 4. The Mad Dog subplot was short-lived and Dexter's escape from a police investigation was implausibly convenient. The episode then pivots to Dexter nearly confessing his murders to Deb, who writes him off because he's high on pop brownies. There are certainly frustrating elements of Episode 5, especially in the tensionless courtroom scene and the relentless licensed soundtrack inclusions. Hopefully, Dexter, Original Sin Episode 6 will get back on track with its main villain arc and will prove that Episode 5 was only taking a breath rather than blowing smoke. Dexter's conveniences also roll over into the episode's big Aaron Spencer reveal. Tanya applauds Dexter for noticing the obvious spot of blood on the outside of the box containing Nikki Spencer's severed finger. Dexter notices a hesitation cut that he interprets as an indication of familiarity between the kidnapper and Nikki, which is a clever reach. The breadcrumb following plot in Episode 7 moves along very swiftly. However, it does well to balance the various subplots, including Laura's first encounter with her eventual killer and Deb throwing away her future at Florida State. Aaron Spencer showed early signs that he could turn out to be the main villain in Original Sin Season 1. For starters, he was the only character connected to Judge Powell and had demonstrated his short fuse when it came to his relationship with his ex-wife, Becca. Every new character in Original Sin is also expected to make an exit at some point, which made him a natural suspect before the premiere even aired. The reveal that Spencer killed Jimmy Powell and then kidnapped and dismembered his teenage son is not as shocking as the series presents it to be. Spencer's line of questioning throughout episode 7 is a bit too direct, asking, "That's it? There's nothing else?" after Tanya completes her blood analysis. It's quite clear at that point he's checking to see if he's been exposed. His multiple bulletin board meetings about Jimmy and Nikki also felt performative and a bit too on the nose, which prematurely spelled things out to us. Now that it's certain Aaron is the main kidnapper and murderer, his motive remains the biggest mystery about his character, along with what Dexter plans to do about him. News of a police captain turned murderer would leave a stain on Miami Metro for life. It will be interesting to see from this point forward whether Dexter will intervene and frame Aaron's potential death as a murder or even an accident